This is the blog Q&A video for Religious Studies 102 World Religions. I've compiled a list of the questions that you all had, and I've got it shared here for you all to see. I'm going to go through these, and I have them broken into categories. If they don't cover all the questions you have, feel free to email me. Otherwise, we'll dive into these. So as far as formatting requirements, you'll need to cover the ideas, sections that I discussed. So for the misconceptions, you'll want to describe the misconception, have it in bold at the top of the submission text, and then analyze the misconception. But as far as kind of MLA, APA, Chicago style, any of those styles are fine for citing sources. You don't have to use a certain font. It's a little bit more informal than you'll find with some of the other assignments. Someone asked, was my blog okay, or did I go somewhere wrong? I haven't graded any blog posts that have been submitted yet. I'm getting there after this last week. It's been a little bit hectic. So I will get those graded as soon as possible. If it's a specific question and you find that you get a poor grade on it, then we can talk about that. But specific questions, feel free to email me. How are the blog posts different from the journal entries? So the journal entries are focused as they're really just reflections over your learning process up to a certain point in the semester. So for Unit 1, the journal entry was focused on what you learned in that unit and what you still have questions about. Journal entry 2 is focused on Unit 2, what you learned, what you still have questions about, and so on. The blog posts are different because they're viewable by the entire class instead of just Unit 8. The blog posts are going to be ways that you can engage with the different religions we're discussing and how they appear in the 21st century in the United States. When we comment, do we need to comment on 3 peers who wrote the same type of blog as us at the same time we submitted? No, they can be any type of blog post at any point. Just make sure that they are 3 different peers, so not just kind of replying to the same person. The whole point here is that you're demonstrating that you're reading at least some of the blogs. Ideally, if this were an in-person class, we would have presentations about the blog posts, but this is kind of the way that we can handle this in an online format. Do they need to be a certain length? Yes. There are length requirements broken down in the guidelines, so make sure that you read those. Generally, they need to be between 300 and 600 words long, but there are different ways that you should be approaching this. So for example, the misconceptions post, just explaining the misconception and pulling in a scholarly source to explain why the misconception is wrong, should be 150 to 300 words. The second part of that blog post, which is analyzing the misconception, why it exists, the harm it does, how understanding it can be helpful for Americans, etc. That part should also be 150 to 300 words. So I have this broken down for you all. You can see these in the guidelines for approximately how the blog post should be broken up, but each blog post should be between 300 and 600 words. For the breakdown of each blog, or the separate posts are just broken down into how many words we need for each explanations we give in the same post. That's the same post, just different, how many words for each explanation. So this is kind of guiding you to let you know, for example, for the media, book, movie evaluation, 500, you shouldn't write a 600-word post that has 500 words summarizing it and then 100 words analyzing it. I want you all to think through kind of briefly summarizing the media and then going into an analysis for most of the post. Do we need to make all 3 of our blog posts about the same religion? No, they actually cannot be about the same religion. So each blog post should be from a different category, and each blog post should be about a different religion. So if you use Christianity as your first blog post, then your second blog post cannot be about Christianity. It can be about any other religion besides that. Denominations count as a religion. So if you decide to write about Catholicism, that counts as Christianity. You can't do another blog post about Protestantism or Orthodox. In the same way, if you decide to write a blog post about Sunni Islam, then your second blog post can't be about Shia Islam. It needs to be about an entirely different religion. The exceptions here would be Hinduism is now not, Buddhism is now not a subset of Hinduism, but it's kind of its own religion. In the same way, you have traditions like Baha'i, Taoism, Shinto, etc. They aren't really part of the religions they began as, so you can talk about those and their beginning religions as well. How long or how many words are required for the peer reviews and responses? You can see in the guidelines that it's 100 words minimum each. Will we get less points if people don't reply to our posts? No, I would never count this against you. So I want to see you responding to other people's posts. If nobody responds to any of your posts, that will not count against your grade at all. So don't worry about that if that's the case. Would you like for us to cite our sources in a works cited page? If so, should that be an MLA format? Anytime you have any sources, you need to cite them. It can be MLA, APA, or Chicago style, and you don't have to include a separate page. You can just include kind of a works cited or bibliography or references heading in the submission text, and then the bibliographic entry there. The required amount of words, yes, I just addressed that, so 300 to 600 word minimum. Misconceptions, misinterpretations. Does the misconception need to be over one of the religions we have already talked about through videos? It does not have to be. So if there's another religion you want to talk about, you're more than welcome to do that. I think for many people, it's easier to talk about the religions we've already kind of set a basis for, but you're welcome to choose anything. Can it be a misconception from the past, or does it need to be from today? So it needs to be something that still persists. If it's a misconception that's kind of popped up in the past and still persists today, then you're welcome to do that. But the whole point of the blog post is that it's something that we still see in the 21st century. Is it geared toward a specific religion, or do you choose? You're welcome to choose any religion as long as it is not one that you've already talked about. So any of the religions we've talked about in the class, any other religions, all of that's fine. Can we discuss a misconception about our own religion? Yes, make sure you still stay non-confessional. So for example, you're not going to want to say, I'm from this religion, here's a misconception about my religion, and here's why I find it offensive, and that's not okay. That's not going to be a successful blog post. The point and the focus should be on, even if this is your religion, here's about the religion, here's the misconception, and here's how to understand it in a better way, and here's research that I've pulled in. What are the requirements for the current events? You should find a current event from the past 6 months, or an article at least that's talking about the current event from the past 6 months, and use that. You can also use a video or podcast. 50 to 150 words of your blog post should summarize the article or podcast and explain how religion plays a role in the current event or medium. 100 to 200 words of it should analyze the way religion's functioning, and 150 to 250 words of it should evaluate how it affects our understanding of the religion and its role in America. You will also need a bibliographic entry of the article or podcast at the beginning of your submission text. And the current events blog posts for current events, do they have to involve religion? Yes. The whole point of this class is to discuss world religions. So the current events have to involve religion. Sometimes religion might come up in a subtle way. So in the Middle East, for example, in the United States, for example, religion plays an inherent role in politics. So it's kind of inseparable, right? So politics and religion function in the same way. And in those cases, then, it doesn't have to explicitly say this is about religion, but your discussion of the current event should talk about that. So if it's something where people are talking about, this is my freedom to believe this, but it's really political, then you might tie in religion and talk about how that plays a role. Are the articles and videos that are referenced required to be a specific length? There's no specific length requirements for those, just a specific length requirement for how much you write about it. For the blog post about an article, podcast, news story, etc., are there sources, websites you would recommend not using? Yes. So as far as sources to use and not use go, here is a chart that talks about bias of sources. You need to stay within kind of this gray circle at the top, and you can find this if you just search like media bias, news sources. You're going to want them to be fact reporting and fairly neutral. It's fine if they skew liberal, skew conservative, either way, but they need to generally be in the neutral and fact reporting category. So anything from Reuters, AP, Bloomberg, NPR, NBC News, CBS News, Time, Washington Post, The Hill, The Wall Street Journal, BBC. I'm not going to keep going on, but all of these are fine. Things you're going to want to generally stay away from are things like MSNBC, Slate, Vanity Fair, The Economist, National Review, Reason.com, The Washington Times, The Examiner, and so on. Things you will definitely want to stay away from are BuzzFeed News, Huffington Post. It depends. Some of the stuff is okay. The same with the Federalist, Drudge Report, Daily KOS, and so on. Always definitely stay away from things from Patriobotics, Occupy Democrats, Inquirer, WorldTruth.tv, The Blaze, Red State, Fox News, for progressives. All of these you should completely stay away from for this course. These are not reliable sources to use for an academic setting. So you can kind of see these little rectangles. The yellow used tentatively. The green is fine to go ahead with. Either way that they skew is fine, but there should be plenty of good information there. So back to these questions. What is the criteria for the current events blog post? I talked about that in the guidelines, and we just covered that a little bit, so you can go through that. What does a media analysis consist of? So I want you all to consider, and I have a book movie here. If you want to do a television show, musical, or something like that, then that's fine. Just let me know. The whole point is that you're going to have a short, so 50 to 150 word summary of whatever the book, movie, television show, etc. is. And then the rest of the blog post is going to analyze it and the way that religion is functioning in it. So this might be things like religion plays an integral role. It's explicitly there. Sometimes it might not be. For example, if you think of The Village by M. Night Shyamalan, you might think of the ways that religion is not explicitly in the story, but does play an implicit role in how the villagers view what's happening. For the third blog post concerning movies and books and movies, does the movie we choose have to be one that's considered of merit, or can it be anything we have read or seen? It does not have to be considered of merit. So this can be, it does not have to be anything lofty. Some people might choose those, right? So there's some great books, movies out there that have a little bit more, I guess, meritorious quality. So I'm thinking Handmaid's Tale, right? People might examine the role of religion there. You can also use something else. I don't think it's 21st century. Well, I guess the movies would be, but if you want to do something as out there as Twilight or Harry Potter, that's fine too. So it doesn't have to be anything big, but I want you to evaluate the way that religion plays a role in stuff that we see in the 21st century. For the blog post about a 21st century book, movie, are there specific ones we can choose from? Any book? Anything is fine. Make sure that it's not a religious book or movie. Basically, the whole point here is religion impacts American culture, even secular culture. So in what ways do we see it impacting that without being explicit that this is a religious thing? So obviously you're going to find Christian fiction books, um, Jewish fiction, Islamic fiction, etc. All of those are going to obviously use religion. But what ways do we see religion playing a role that are for secular audiences? So in our Islam module, we talk about Miss Marvel, Kamal Khan, and she is a Muslim superhero. But this comic is not targeted for specifically Muslim audiences. It's targeted for anybody in kind of the general population. So that would be the kind of thing we could talk about. I hope that this answers all the questions that you have. But if you have any more, feel free to send me an email and I'm happy to answer those.